Imagine being told that the ramp you need to enter your own home is aesthetically displeasing and has to be removed. Now imagine that you're a disabled veteran who served your country, and the person making this demand has never faced a single barrier in her life. What would you do? Before we begin, I want to clarify that today we are presenting a fictional, dramatized story created strictly for educational commentary and entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real persons or actual events is purely coincidental. Today's story was submitted by one of our subscribers who experienced this situation firsthand. To protect their privacy, we cannot share their real name, so we'll call them Marcus Brennan for this story. Marcus Brennan was a 42-year-old Iraq War veteran. He'd served 2 tours overseas before an IED explosion changed his life forever. The blast damaged his spine, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. After years of rehabilitation and adjustment, Marcus had built a good life for himself. He worked as an IT consultant from home, had a close circle of friends, and had finally saved enough to buy his first house. The house Marcus chose wasn't random. He'd spent months searching for the right property, something with accessibility features, or at least the potential for them. When he found a ranch-style home in Meadowbrook Estates, he thought he'd found the perfect place. The community seemed quiet, the neighbors friendly during his visit, and most importantly, the house was in an HOA that claimed to be welcoming and inclusive. Marcus closed on the house in early spring. One of his first projects was installing a wheelchair ramp at the front entrance. The house had 3 steps leading to the door, making it impossible for him to enter independently. He hired a licensed contractor who pulled all the necessary permits from the city. The ramp was built to ADA specifications, proper slope, handrails, non-slip surface, everything by the book. The installation took 3 days. Marcus couldn't have been happier watching it take shape. For the first time in years, he'd be able to come and go from his own home without depending on anyone. The contractor did beautiful work. The ramp was sturdy, safe, and actually quite attractive with its wood finish that matched the house's trim point. 2 weeks after the ramp was completed, Marcus received a letter from the HOA. It was signed by Patricia Hendricks, the Architectural Review Committee chairperson. The letter stated that his wheelchair ramp was in violation of community guidelines because it had not been pre-approved by the Architectural Committee and that it negatively impacted the neighborhood's visual harmony. Marcus was confused. He checked the HOA bylaws before building. There was nothing that specifically prohibited accessibility ramps. He'd followed every city code and building regulation. He called the HOA office and left a message for Patricia, assuming this was some kind of misunderstanding that could be easily cleared up. Patricia called him back the next day. Her tone was clipped and dismissive from the start. She informed Marcus that all exterior modifications required architectural committee approval, and his ramp was an unsightly addition that set a bad precedent. When Marcus explained that he needed the ramp to access his home, Patricia's response was breathtaking in its callousness. Perhaps you should have considered whether this community was appropriate for your situation before purchasing. Marcus felt like he'd been punched. He kept his voice steady and asked Patricia if she understood that what she was suggesting violated the Fair Housing Act. Patricia scoffed and said that HOA rules superseded personal preferences and that he had 30 days to remove the ramp or face fines of $100 per day. But Marcus had no idea what was coming next. Patricia didn't just send one letter. Over the following 2 weeks, Marcus received 5 more increasingly threatening notices. The daily fine amount increased to $250. Patricia began including photos of his ramp in the letters with sections circled in red marker and comments like eyesore and property value impact written in the margins. Then Patricia escalated her campaign beyond letters. She started showing up at Marcus's house. The first time, she knocked on his door with a clipboard, saying she was there for an inspection. Marcus refused to let her in. The second time, she came with 2 other HOA board members, standing in his driveway and taking photographs of his ramp from multiple angles. The third time Patricia showed up, she brought a contractor. Marcus watched from his window as she gestured at his ramp while the contractor took measurements and notes. When Marcus wheeled himself outside to ask what was happening, Patricia smiled coldly and said, "Since you refuse to comply, the HOA will be removing the ramp ourselves and billing you for the demolition costs." Marcus told her that would be illegal. Patricia responded, "We'll see what's legal when you're drowning in fines and legal fees." Then she and her entourage left. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He'd served his country, survived war, rebuilt his life after a devastating injury, and now he was being bullied by a power-hungry HOA chairperson who seemed to take personal offense to his existence. The injustice of it burned in his chest. The next morning, Marcus started making calls. He contacted a disability rights attorney named Jennifer Ramos. After hearing his story and reviewing the letters from Patricia, Jennifer was furious. She explained that the Fair Housing Act explicitly required HOAs to make reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities, and that wheelchair ramps were about as clear-cut as reasonable accommodations got. Patricia's threats weren't just wrong, they were illegal, and the HOA could face significant federal penalties. Jennifer sent a cease and desist letter to the HOA, citing specific Fair Housing Act violations and threatening legal action if the harassment continued. She also filed a formal complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development. For about a week, things were quiet. Marcus thought maybe Patricia had finally backed down. But then he received notice that there would be an emergency HOA board meeting to discuss his ongoing violations. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday evening. Little did Marcus know, this was just the beginning. Marcus decided to attend the meeting. Jennifer advised him that he had every right to be there and to defend himself. When Marcus wheeled into the community clubhouse that Thursday night, he found about 30 residents already seated. Patricia sat at the front table with 4 other board members, looking smug. The meeting began with standard business, budget discussions, landscaping contract renewals. Then Patricia moved to new business and immediately launched into what she called the Marcus Brennan ramp situation. She presented her case as though Marcus were a criminal. She showed the photographs she'd taken, passed around printed estimates of property value decreases, and claimed that multiple neighbors had complained about the ramp being unsightly. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he wheeled himself to the front. He calmly explained that he was a disabled veteran, that the ramp was necessary for him to access his home, and that it was protected under federal law. He presented copies of Jennifer's legal letter and the HUD complaint. Several residents in the audience nodded sympathetically. But Patricia wasn't done. She interrupted Marcus and said, "This isn't about discrimination. This is about maintaining our community standards. If we allow one person to ignore the rules, where does it end? Next thing you know, people will be parking RVs in their driveways and painting their houses purple." Someone in the audience actually said, "That's ridiculous. He's not painting his house purple. He's using a ramp to get inside." Patricia shot that person a withering look. The board took a vote. 3 members voted to continue pursuing action against Marcus. 2 abstained. Patricia announced that the fines would continue and that the HOA was exploring all legal options. Marcus left that meeting knowing he had to take drastic action. The HOA wasn't going to stop. Patricia seemed personally invested in making his life miserable. So Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He called the local news. Let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. If you're finding value in this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you've ever experienced a similar situation, feel free to share your story in the comments. Channel 7 News had an investigative reporter named Amanda Chun who specialized in consumer protection and civil rights stories. When Marcus reached out and explained his situation, Amanda was immediately interested. A disabled veteran being harassed by an HOA for installing an accessibility ramp? That was exactly the kind of story that needed to be told. Amanda and her camera crew came to Marcus's house 2 days later. They filmed the ramp, interviewed Marcus about his military service and his injury, and documented all the threatening letters from Patricia. Marcus showed them the city permits, the ADA compliance certificates, and Jennifer's legal correspondence. Then Amanda did something brilliant. She requested an on-camera interview with Patricia Hendricks. What happened next left everyone speechless. Patricia agreed to the interview, apparently thinking she could spin the story in her favor. She met Amanda at the HOA clubhouse, dressed professionally, and wearing her best concerned community leader expression. Amanda started with softball questions about the HOA's mission and values. Patricia spoke eloquently about preserving property values and maintaining standards. Then Amanda asked, "Can you explain why the HOA is demanding that Marcus Brennan, a disabled veteran, remove the wheelchair ramp he needs to enter his home?" Patricia's mask slipped immediately. She bristled and said, This isn't about Mr. Brennan's disability. This is about him refusing to follow proper procedures. Amanda pressed, but the Fair Housing Act requires HOAs to make reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities, doesn't it? Patricia responded, and this was caught on camera. The Fair Housing Act is often misinterpreted. Our community has standards, and those standards apply to everyone equally. We can't make exceptions just because someone claims they need something. Amanda's eyebrows raised. Claims they need something? Mr. Brennan is paralyzed and uses a wheelchair. How else would you suggest he access his home? Patricia incredibly said, perhaps through the garage. Or he could have purchased a single-level home without steps. There are options that don't involve imposing on the entire neighborhood's aesthetic experience. It was devastating. Patricia had just admitted on camera that she valued aesthetic experience over a disabled veteran's ability to enter his own home. The story aired 2 nights later during the evening news. The segment was titled, HOA versus Veteran, The Fight for Access. It included footage of Marcus's ramp, his military service photos, the threatening letters, and most importantly, Patricia's stunning interview. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The news station's phone lines lit up with outraged viewers. The story went viral on social media. Local disability rights organizations issued statements condemning the HOA. Other veterans groups rallied to Marcus's defense. By the next morning, news crews from 3 other stations were parked outside Patricia's house. And that's when the truth finally came out. Under the intense media scrutiny, other Meadowbrook Estates residents started coming forward with their own stories. Patricia had a history of targeting people she deemed undesirable. A family with an autistic child who needed sensory-friendly landscaping. An elderly couple who'd installed a medical alert box on their exterior wall. A single mother who'd put up a small playground set for her kids. Patricia had gone after all of them. The HOA's lawyer, after seeing Patricia's disastrous news interview, immediately advised the board to cease all action against Marcus and issue a formal apology. 3 board members resigned in protest of Patricia's behavior. Patricia herself stepped down as architectural committee chair amid calls for her complete removal from the board. But the damage to the HOA was already done. HUD launched a formal investigation. The HOA's insurance company sent representatives to assess potential liability, and Marcus's attorney, Jennifer, filed a federal lawsuit on his behalf seeking damages for discrimination, harassment, and emotional distress. The case settled 6 months later. The HOA paid Marcus a substantial monetary settlement, issued a public apology, and implemented comprehensive Fair Housing Act training for all board members. The settlement also required the HOA to revise their bylaws to explicitly protect accessibility modifications and to create a streamlined approval process for disability accommodations. Patricia Hendricks quietly moved out of Meadowbrook Estates 3 months after the news story aired. According to neighbors, she couldn't handle the social backlash. The woman who'd valued aesthetic harmony above human dignity found herself completely ostracized. As for Marcus, he still lives in his house with his wheelchair ramp. The ramp that Patricia called an eyesore is now seen by most neighbors as a symbol of resilience and justice. Several residents have personally apologized to Marcus for not speaking up sooner. One neighbor, a retired carpenter, even built a matching decorative flower box at the base of the ramp, integrating it more beautifully into the home's facade. Marcus learned an important lesson through this ordeal. Sometimes the system doesn't protect you until you force it to be exposed. He tried to resolve things quietly, legally, professionally. It wasn't until he brought public attention to the injustice that things actually changed. In interviews after the settlement, Marcus said something that stuck with a lot of people. "I didn't serve my country to come home and be treated like a second-class citizen by someone on a power trip. Disability rights are civil rights, and they're worth fighting for, even when the fight is exhausting, even when you just want to live your life in peace. Because if you don't stand up, the next person will face the same discrimination." The story of Marcus Brennan and Patricia Hendricks became a case study in disability rights advocacy. Law schools use it in Fair Housing Act courses. HOA management companies cite it in training materials. And most importantly, it empowered other people with disabilities to fight back against similar discrimination. Today, Marcus's wheelchair ramp stands as a testament to what can happen when someone refuses to be bullied, when they understand their rights, and when they're willing to shine a light on injustice. Sometimes, calling the news channel isn't just about exposing wrongdoing, it's about protecting everyone who'll come after you.